that because of the work that the drone industry has done and how hard it has worked to get creative to establish itself as a superior player within the economy, puts us in a prime position to help restore consumer confidence.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 276. Can drones help to restore consumer confidence in this time of the coronavirus? For that question, we head to Fargo, North Dakota, and speak with Anthony Molzahn, CEO and co-founder of Project Phoenix. Project Phoenix is a software company and developer of AegisFlow, an online marketplace for drone pilots to upload, stream, share, and sell photos, videos, and 3D modeling content. As the CEO of a software company and operator of a drone services platform, Anthony has a unique view of the drone ecosystem in Fargo. I recently spoke with Anthony about how the coronavirus was affecting that ecosystem. His answer surprised me. In this edition of the Drone Radio Show, Anthony shares his insights into how drone operators are adapting to business under the coronavirus, how the North Dakota Department of Commerce is encouraging local businesses to deploy measures that will restore consumer confidence, and how drone businesses are using the technology to create value while supporting economic stability. But before we hear from Anthony, I want to thank those of you who are supporting my funding campaign. Whether it's $1, $100, or much more, you can help defray the cost of production and keep the podcast going and growing. Go to droneradioshow.com/donate. So let's learn how drone businesses are helping to restore consumer confidence with Anthony Molzahn of Project Phoenix. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Anthony to introduce himself.
My name is Anthony Molzahn, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of AegisFlow, an online marketplace for commercial drone pilots to upload, share, and stream and sell their photos and their videos and their 3D modeling content.
And where are you located?
So we're located out of Fargo, North Dakota, and our entire team is up here. We're located in a technology park, a research and tech park, one of 180 technology parks across the country. And it allows us to interact with a lot of the great innovations in technology, especially autonomous vehicles in North Dakota. Some of the stuff that we're doing here is leading the nation, and we're right in the midst of all of those things as they're coming to light.
When I was in Fargo a few years ago, I noticed a lot of excitement and interaction by people in the industry. How has the coronavirus changed that?
I mean, we are certainly living in a new world with the existence of coronavirus. And what we're seeing right now, one of the most important things we do is that we work together to help restore consumer confidence. And that's one thing that I've seen our region take, the executive orders that have been presented, which then present economic fears, and it leads to new trends. And we're seeing things like up here, Walmart, they're actually leasing their parking lots for drive-in theaters. And it's creating a new trend both in retail and the entertainment landscape. It is changing these industries overnight. And so restoring confidence is, while it is one thing to restore it, the durability of that confidence, and it's going to reverberate an entire generation. I mean, think back to like the collapse of the stock market in the 30s and the resulting mindset. People would not banks, and they would save for absolutely everything. It took a whole generation before the U.S. consumer mindset was reset. And that generation and their children, they fought to hold on to that trend. I mean, look at the real world example of Japan today. There's a long-term recession, the habitual saving attitudes, and then the export reliant economy. I mean, banks have a negative interest rate to combat the yen from going out of control, getting too strong, right? So one of the things that we see up here to kind of help, restore consumer confidence and hopefully prevent some of those new trends, the new mindsets. There's a company out of Grand Forks, also dually stationed out of Iceland, called Flytrex. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they started doing drone delivery of food and beverages to folks out at golf courses. But now they're actually using their tech to deliver essential goods from super centers right in our region directly to consumers' backyards. I don't know if you know who Wes Shover is, but he's the head of the US operations there. And then he's also our region's AUVSI chapter leader.
How is that working? I mean, the usual challenge is how to get packages into the hands of the customer. Are the deliveries in the urban environment or the rural areas?
Both, actually. So, between authorizations, being able to get clearance to fly in these particular areas, and that's a kind of a main mindset that Flytrex is working towards. I mean, as long as they're following, general FAA regulations, that coupled with some clever waivers, they're actually able to get this done. Some of the stuff they have to do, with waivers over 55 pounds, there's actually another group that is doing this. So it's interesting because with Flytrex, and not necessarily Flytrex, but in general, in our region, we don't have quite as many areas that you can't fly. And maybe that's our advantage.
Now, because of the FAA test site, isn't quite a bit of Fargo and the surrounding region open to drone flights?
Yeah, the Grand Sky Business Park, and then we're one of the 10 states, to lead autonomous vehicles into the kind of the next generation of what it looks like across the US. One of the pieces of work that Commerce in the state did was actually, I think they adopted a $33 million budget to create beyond visual line of sight tests going from across the whole state. So being able to fly truly beyond visual line of sight and using some of the smaller airports as ways to land and take off those large autonomous vehicles.
Getting back to Flytrex, what sort of things are they transporting?
It is really a lot of essential goods. So whether it be, things that you need, just general supplies, things that were probably hard to get and you don't want to leave the home. These are things that every home needs, whether it be the toilet papers, the sanitizers, general cleaning supplies, diapers.
Were the deliveries primarily for people who were told to stay home or were opting to do so because of the virus?
It goes beyond that. I mean, from what I understand, effectively, if they place an order, there's different types of care packages that you get. One of their partners with, again, coming back to Walmart, you basically order that and then Flytrex will grab that care package and then deliver it. And I don't exactly know what are the items, what's the manifest of the care package, but people are going there because they don't have either the capacity to leave or restrictions that put in place because they might be an at-risk individual.
Do you know how they actually fulfill the delivery? Do they hover over the house and drop it? Or is it lowered? Do they land? How does it work?
It's similar to how like Amazon services. I believe they actually throw it, a disc into the backyard and they'll drop the supplies right on top of that hex. For more information on that, it's flytrex.com, flytrex.com. And they actually have a special page, I think, for COVID-19 that they post on there. And then it talks all about what they're doing today, what they're trying to do, and the work that they are seeing will probably stick long after coronavirus goes away.
Well, sure, out of necessity, they've proven that drone deliveries to residential customers is possible.
That, and, it doesn't require people to change what they're doing. Maybe they have, maybe they can't leave because their children are at home. They simply can't go out for anything other than they've got small children that they don't want to take to a grocery store that's hours out of their way now that they have extra people, during the middle of the day that they normally be able to do this on their own. From what I remember with Flytrex, they actually do a wire releasing mechanism. At least that's what they were doing with the golf courses. The food and beverages would actually be released, and then the wire would release the product down, and then the drone would fly away without the payload.
You mentioned something earlier that I found interesting, at least a couple of times. The idea of trying to restore consumer confidence. How does the drone industry fit into this objective?
One place we're seeing drones used to restore the consumer confidence is with drone spraying. This requires typically for the drones to be over 55 pounds. So once they get the waiver to be able to fly over 55 pounds, they'll use drones that have tanks on them as a spraying solution to sanitize public areas like parks and playgrounds, municipal parks, things like that. One company, Skyscopes, Matt Dunleavy's group, I think he may have been on your podcast before. Yeah. And then another company out here, RJ Energy Solutions, Russell Shell, he's actually considering using drones equipped with UV lighting for inside commercial facilities to sanitize common areas. And this actually adds to the work that they're doing with IoT, Internet of Things. they granularly monitor CO2 and moisture levels to auto start the air cleaning cycles and reduce the atmospheric stagnancy. So, coronavirus wants to attach to big molecules. And if you reduce the coronavirus parts per million, well, there you go. That coupled with this. And then we actually chatted with another group out in Bismarck, the middle of our state where our capital is. And they created a new sanitizer that uses a plant native to North Dakota, safflower. And they actually want to take drone spraying to schools for gymnasiums, cafeterias, auditoriums, athletic fields, and stands. I mean, there are 240 districts, more than that actually, in North Dakota alone. And what does it look like if we're able to reopen in the fall with confidence? What is that going to do for economic resiliency, right?
What is safflower used for?
It's one of the ingredients that they're using to make the sanitizing solution just easier on the skin. And so it's similar to olive oil, if you will. And so if you sanitize your hands a few times a day, they get pretty raw. And so the direct application, when kids are using it, like in the schools, all together, they'll have that. And then they actually want to take that and be able to apply this effectively to all areas that are going to be publicly touched over and over. I mean, the sanitizer that's used to wash carts and things like that at stores, it has this feeling that like your skin is etching away. And they've been able to make it as a better consumer experience or a better user experience overall. And they're just at the beginning. They're just thinking about doing this right now. But what does that look like if you're able to take this technology and the innovations for sanitizing solutions and create a space where schools can open and people can get back to work or get back to whatever the daily grind that they were accustomed to with one less thing to worry about. Their small children having to be at home and not getting the education that they deserve, or, suffering both with their work as well as the children not getting the attention that they deserve at home.
Yeah, definitely. I know my friends that have children, it's a lot of stress trying to work at home and having to manage the education of their children at the same time. So getting kids back to school is a huge benefit. But having parents and teachers feel confident and secure about that is really critical.
Oh, absolutely. And, I keep touching on it. And maybe it's just because that's something that, the North Dakota Department of Commerce, state legislation, our senators, they're all focused on economic resiliency. Actually, I think there was a budget approval from the Department of Commerce that companies in North Dakota can apply for up to $50,000 grant, an economic resiliency grant, to help restore consumer confidence. And that might be purchasing tablets so you can actually pay further away, hiring drone services to be able to deliver, your products to home. What does it look like if we are able to kind of instantiate some type of telehealth-like system to reduce the burden of servers at restaurants interfacing with thousands of strangers a week? What does it look like if we can augment them while simultaneously reducing the volatility of payroll burden for servers? I mean, the number of customers in restaurants has gone down dramatically, but you still have to have enough servers on staff in case there's an oversupply of consumers coming in at, lunch or dinner rush hours, right? And so those are razor thin margins that restaurants couldn't deal with before. And the payroll protection program isn't going to keep that margin from going upside down. There's got to be something different.
So the idea of reinstilling consumer confidence is not just a Fargo objective. It's part of a statewide public policy initiative.
Yes, the budget approval was $69 million, I think, and it's a grant for up to $50,000 per company. And it could be things like getting equipment to encourage this, the minimum 6 foot space between one employee and the next, or think of the things that you might need to make sure that you could, in good stewardship, protect your customers as well as your staff. What is that going to cost? Because you normally would instantiate that, with whatever budget you've got now. How can a grant come in and be used as a subsidy? Because the Department of Commerce has, their primary objective is to make sure that, the growth and durability of our economy based on the companies that come and live here and grow here. What do they need? And the way I said, we need to be able to have safety protocols in place. But one, we don't know what those protocols all are. And two, we don't know what that budget is. And we know that we won't have a budget for it even when we have those answers. The Department of Commerce basically said, hold my beer. Here's 50 grand. Just, we'll take it from here. And I mean, this happened very fast. And they're figuring out as they go, but they need to move at the speed of business. And that's one thing I think our commerce has done a pretty good job with. And that's not necessarily directed towards drones and autonomous vehicles, but one of the groups who talked about RJ, they're actually taking this and they're helping their customers walk through. You use our services, some of it might be drone related. Here's what our cost will be to make it so that we can help protect you and your business and your building and restore consumer confidence. This is the services that we provide, and you can actually use this as a line item in the grant proposal for the economic resiliency grant. I was like, holy cow. In one day, this company basically opened up a brand new market because they're able to help them build and answer the questions for all of these businesses that don't know what they need and they don't know what it's going to cost.
Since March, life has changed for all of us. How has the drone industry responded to the crisis?
I look every single month at the new remote pilots that have been added to the FAA Airman Registry. And as of July 1st, there are 180,852 active remote pilots as of just 7 days ago. The number of new pilots being added to the market is still 3,000 to 5,000 each month. I think in April, it was like 5,500 new remote pilots were actually added to the Airman Registry, which means that the industry itself, people still want to fly drones. In fact, maybe now they're seeing that this strength in growing numbers with the shift in the industry, hiring less pilots as employees, one of the things that we've seen as another trend, instead of bringing them as contractors, it proves that I think that this industry, the drone industry, is in the best position to come up with solutions to offset COVID-19 economic effects.
When did you start seeing that companies were hesitant to bring new people on and that contracting was starting to swing back up?
With a number of the pilots that we have with our beta users, we saw that a lot less folks are trying to take a construction worker and say, go get your Part 107, and we're going to have you do that halftime. The return on their investment wasn't there to hire full-time employees that had drone capabilities. And so they wanted to take that off the mark altogether and says, what? We might need a drone pilot, once a week or whatever it is, or we're building a project, but to have them on long term, the numbers weren't, especially in construction, the numbers weren't proving their weight, to have someone on full time for this. And so we noticed it early on because there was a time, over the last year, right around where the 2-year mark from when the 107 test, we started doing the recurrent test, there was a significant drop of people not getting their license renewed. So we actually saw a drop in numbers. And so the numbers that we see today are actually a lot of new pilots that weren't part of the Airman Registry before. And I think that slowdown was, hey, I can actually get hired as a pilot. And we were seeing the numbers, more people were being hired in the top 3, agriculture, construction, real estate for full-time pilot services. But that's not the case anymore. And now we're seeing thousands of new pilots being added every single month. And so we saw this inverse correlation. I don't know if that makes sense, but it was an inverse correlation. So that coupled with asking questions of our pilots that we know and their market and looking to the 25,000 plus remote pilot Facebook groups, we saw that shift kind of happen and you could just put the pieces together. I don't know if that makes sense. It's just partial speculation, but enough of those pieces came together to show that less people are being hired to fly full time with a company and more people are hiring pilots as contractors instead. It's cheaper.
I was talking with someone recently that mentioned business for drone operators was actually increasing because there was still a need for certain work to be done, but people also needed to stay at home. Things like inspections and construction and security monitoring, for example. In many cases, drones provided a safe and effective way of doing the work, and experienced independent drone operators are stepping in to fill the demand.
This is actually good news then. What we're seeing then is effectively a double bell curve. We're actually seeing a lot less folks kind of in that mid-range. You have some that are going all in, and those who are the full-time pilots that are a part of companies, now they're going deep. They're having them do more work, creative work. The majority of businesses are not using them. And then you're seeing a lot more contractors to pick up the slack of those who don't have that return on investment. So that actually is a strength because it means the businesses will definitely know when they need a pilot on full time. And it makes it easier for the case for contractors is you're not one of those businesses yet.
Do you have any examples of how industries are changing in response to the virus and how drones are part of the solution?
Talking about North Dakota, there are 3 areas of focus for North Dakota. And our Senator, John Hoeven, he often discusses what we call the three legs of our North Dakota economy: agriculture, energy, and technology. And so we've been primarily talking about technology, drone technology being used to restore the consumer confidence. But energy has actually seen a recent win with this pilot project, the North Dakota company Eyesight RPV, Tommy Kenville's company. He is actually coordinated with the Western Dakota Energy Association. And the purpose is to analyze drone footage and determine dirt road degradation after weather events. The project's purpose is to aid transportation logistics, specifically to prevent heavy trucks from wrecking the subbase of a gravel road. I mean, this is, I can't remember exactly. It's like $1 million per half mile, or it's like a couple $1,000,000 per mile of damage when this is left unchecked, when a big heavy truck actually comes in and ruins the subbase. And it was important that we saw, because we saw that coronavirus disrupted the supply chain for oil and gas energy. It slowed the purchase of crude to the point that contract prices for delivery of barrels were literally negative. As in, you had to pay someone to hold on to purchase crude. Wow. And so one leg of North Dakota economy was weakened, another was threatened, and then technology came in, specifically drone technology with Eyesight RPV, and they hoisted up the economy in novel ways, a way to save money in a big way by preventing needless damage that was otherwise unchecked, because the checkbook could support it. They didn't care. They just got it fixed and took care of it. That's not the case anymore. The timing was right. It dovetailed nicely, and we're going to see more of this happen. And this was just a pilot project for one county, and millions is already saved. What does that look like across the state, across every basin? What does that look like for oil and gas and energy in general?
So getting a little more personal, how is the coronavirus affecting your business?
AegisFlow, we talk about that, but the name of our company is Project Phoenix. And so we do custom software development, and AegisFlow happens to be our own intellectual property that we've built ourselves. We actually saw an increase in business because businesses were so busy trying to keep up with sales and the rigmarole of their day-to-day work. When coronavirus hit in a big way and these folks had to basically go home or work remotely, they looked in, how can we get better? And so we actually took on a few pretty great projects. One was an IoT, actually RJ Energy, the one that I was talking about earlier, that is actually a piece of custom software that we developed. Two more pieces of software that we're developing is actually training and mentorship platform for folks to basically build better businesses, be better stewards. And it's actually a big part of it is amidst coronavirus, how to, theme of the day, restore economic and consumer confidence. And so a platform we're actually building on behalf of the businesses in North Dakota to show them ways that they can do it. And then the other one is for a company that created a sustainable coating, a paint for metal. And they contracted with the DoD. And these guys are chemists. These folks are brilliant. And they created a triple bottom line clean tech solution. And the DoD picked this up, and they now needed basically a database, a platform to automatically build out their reports. They're spending 40 to 60 hours a month doing these reports. And when we're done, we'll cut it down to just a couple of hours, mostly for them to write their notes. So automating all of the work that they're doing on behalf of the DoD over 5 years is putting years of work life back into the hands of these people who would otherwise be wasting their time doing manual reports. And so we saw an increase because they needed to be efficient. And we said, we got your back.
Is the area where you're located in Fargo under any stay-at-home restrictions?
North Dakota never officially closed. There was executive orders for a couple of industries to close, and that was a challenge, but those executive orders have been lifted. And that's one of the reasons why the Resiliency grant is put in place, because the executive order, but trailing behind that was just general consumer fear, right? Economic fear. And then what can we do to combat that? What's the equal and opposite reaction to an executive order? And the answer was this Resiliency grant. It says, you know what? We're okay. We're moving forward. Let's not put a Band-Aid over a grievous wound, like with the Paycheck Protection Program. Let's do something that is sustainable for our economy. And because we never shut down, not every state could do it. We got lucky. We made a decision that is, I guess, across the country, probably unpopular, but it was one that worked for a state with less than 1 million people. North Dakota's wide open. Fargo is wide open. And if anything, what we're seeing is we're just adopting to the changes. There are less seats in restaurants. There is more takeout. People are wearing their masks. We recognize that the mask is less for us than it is for the person across from us. And if enough people do that, then we're in a good space. We're in a good place. People still buy their coffees. People still want to go and purchase local, buy local, support local. And that still happens today. That is so deeply ingrained in our mindset. We can't take that away, but we recognize that being able to take precautions is actually helping the businesses in a way that is not directly related to an invoice or, making a purchase, but it is one that's going to allow that company and that business to stay in business a little bit longer.
Anthony, is there anything that we missed that we should talk about?
There is an event coming up called Autonomous ND, Autonomous North Dakota, and it's actually taking place on August 5th. And it goes into detail regarding the state of autonomous vehicles in North Dakota. And I bring this up because this is a hybridized event that will simultaneously take place online and in person. And I believe the president and CEO of AUVSI, Brian Wynn, will be speaking at this event. And so the official release of this conference will be delivered from AUVSI. So be on the lookout for those details and be on the lookout on how to participate and be a part of the conference. We want to show, everything that we talked about today. A lot of that and a lot more is going to be discussed during this conference on August 5th. So show up to the event and see what we're doing.
If people want to keep up with what North Dakota is doing to advance economic resiliency and consumer confidence, what do they need to do or where do they need to go?
Check out the North Dakota Department of Commerce website, commerce.nd.gov. And it'll talk about, on the front page, we'll have the Economic Resiliency Grant, details about it, as well as other things that they have already done amidst COVID-19 and how they have helped support businesses and the regional economies that they're supporting across the state. I would say another place that is always good to check in with is Emerging Prairie. They're a local nonprofit that their purpose is to improve the human condition. And they do that by helping startups and entrepreneurs across the country, in the world, actually. But they're located right here in Fargo, North Dakota. And they actually convinced a company, Plug and Play, a pretty heavy lifting accelerator, to host one of their accelerators in North Dakota. So we're actually one of the main sites for Plug and Play across the world because of the work that Emerging Prairie is doing. So they're always keying in on what's happening. And they are really great for disseminating information about things that North Dakota is doing and how it might help not just our region, but the country.
Based on your experience, Anthony, what advice would you give to other drone businesses and operators on how to move forward with regard to the virus?
I like to draw from examples of things that I have seen, and hopefully that inspires commercial drone pilots to say, oh, well, that's something I could do, or maybe not exactly that. Going back to drone spraying, it isn't uncommon in our area, but it's something that isn't talked about a lot yet. There's a company, Prairie Sky UAV. They were focused on weed control, and they partnered with the DOT to get rid of the weeds on the sides of the roads. Well, what goes inside the tank may change, but having drone pilots available, like in our region, to take these ideas and to put them into practice, it definitely helps. And if there are other people that, have the equipment or have the capacity or the competency to fly drones that can spray, there is a new vertical that is becoming because of coronavirus. And so if you think you want to get into a market that's not, really too tapped, or at least a vertical of, go to market with your services, drone spraying might be one of them. Others, going back to what you said earlier, the companies who are finding new and novel ways to use drone pilots full time, what are they doing? Lean on those companies and say, well, for companies that are not quite big enough to take on a pilot full time, what can I do to help those companies part-time and help multiple companies part-time simultaneously?
So how do you think things are going to go?
We have a long way to go, and coronavirus is one of many that will present itself. And now that we know the veil has been pulled back and we now know the weakest parts of our economy in general and where they were glaringly weak, and some of the decisions that may have been made throughout this process, it was ugly. And we all made mistakes and we all learned from those mistakes. And I think ultimately what matters is that when the next one hits, we now know what not to do and we now know what does work. And as long as we keep that in mind, history and memory, those are two fickle beasts that fight against each other. And hopefully the memory wins out in this one.
And for my final question, Anthony, What message would you like to leave regarding the resiliency of the drone industry?
The big takeaway today is that it is really important that we work together to help restore consumer confidence. And I believe that the drone industry is in the best position to come up with the solutions to offset COVID-19 economic effects and restore that consumer confidence. I believe that because of the work that the drone industry has done and how hard it has worked to get creative to establish itself as a superior player within the economy, puts us in a prime position to help restore consumer confidence.
That's it for episode 276 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Anthony Molzahn of Project Phoenix. I want to thank Anthony for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about Project Phoenix, AegisFlow, or want to connect with Anthony, check out the webpage at AegisFlow.com. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1, you can help defray the cost of production. To donate, go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Goers.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.